Applying Leadership Principles, Chapter 10. Preview, Leadership and Leaders. Myths about leadership. Figuring out the dynamics of leadership. What good leaders do. Encouraging distributive leadership. Ethical guidelines for group leaders. Leadership and leaders. Successful groups must have effective leadership, something every member, including a leader, is capable of demonstrating. Leadership. The use of communication to modify attitudes and behaviors of members to meet group goals and needs. Accomplished through communication consists of behaviors that help the group achieve shared goals, must be adaptable to the changing conditions. So when you look at leadership, this is something that all people can possess. And when you have it, it is something that actually is used to help people kind of help the groups, kind of help mold the groups, kind of how they behave and how they act. You'll find leadership, with good leadership, you'll also find there's good communication. And another thing too, is not rigid. It is very fluid. So when you find leadership, it can adapt to changing environments and changing conditions. And when you are leading, one of the things that does happen a lot of times is things change. How well does the leader adjust to that? Leadership and leaders. So leaders attempt to modify behaviors using influence, use of interpersonal power to modify the actions and attitudes of others. So when we look at the power, the sources of power and influence, they vary. So we got legitimate power, reward power, punishment power, coercive power. So let's look at this. Legitimate power. That's influence based on a member's title or position. So this is based upon what position you hold. So by virtue you holding a position, you have legitimate power. Reward power. Influence derived from someone's ability to give members what they want and need. So this is where you have someone that's actually, they're very resourceful and they can, based upon what members want and need, is able to reward, influence, and help people get things that they want and need. Punishment power. Influence derived from someone's ability to take away what members want. So if you don't do this, I'll take something away from it, like reward. If you do this, then this is what you get, a reward. Punishment's polar opposite. If you do this, this is what I'm going to take away from you. Coercive is using threats or force to make a member comply. So if you don't do what I tell you to do, or you do what I ask you to do, then I'm going to make you do it. You won't have a choice. If you say you don't want to do it, I'm going to find a way to coerce it and make you do it. Now, if you think about that, that is probably the worst type of leadership to have. But oddly enough, there are some people who believe that is a viable way of doing business. Expert power is interpersonal influence that stems from someone's perceived knowledge or skill. Basically, you have a subject matter expert and they know what they're talking about. So realistically, even if you have people in the room that outranks that person, they can't compete with the person when it comes to their level of knowledge about a topic. For instance, if you have a guy who's an executive and he has who's not an engineer, but he has engineers work for him, that would be expert power. The engineers know stuff that he doesn't, but he's ultimately the person responsible for getting things done. Reverent power, a person's ability to be liked and admired. So reverent power is something that when I've seen the best leaders out there, they have that. People like them and they admire them. They have a way that makes people feel good. They have a way of making people want to work for them. I've had the privilege of meeting a few people like that, and they were very influential in helping me try to guide my career. Information power is based upon the person's ability to control information. So if you're in a position where the information has to come from you, for instance, if people need to do something, but they can't do it if they don't get the information from you, that's information power. Ecological power stems from ability to manipulate the logistics of tasks and physical environment of the group. So when you look at that, you can manipulate the task and the physical environment of the group. For instance, if there's a group that's looking to do something, but they need a certain facility to use to do it, but you control that facility or that area where they need to go work and do some things, That's ecological power. A leader's social influence often involves more than one source of power, and the leadership involves mutual influence between leaders and the other members of the group. So a leader is a person in the group who uses interpersonal influence to help the group achieve its goals. All individuals should supply some of the needed leadership services. Any member of the group, with or without title, can at times function as a group's leader. Communication is the process through which a person actually leads others. So when you see this, a leader is something, it might not be the person that's in charge. And when you see functional groups or teams, what you find sometimes is the leader can be interchangeable depending upon what the situation is and what's going on. And when they're really functional, there's no competition. Well, you was in charge last time, so this time I should be in charge. You won't have that because they understand that they're a group, they're a team, and they know that at certain times someone's going to have more expertise in the area than someone else. There are two types of leaders. A designated leader is appointed or elected, and then there's an emergent leader, someone who starts out as the same status as other members but gradually moves up. So when you see, because I had two careers, I was both. One, I was a designated leader in the U.S. Army, and another, I was an emergent leader with the federal government because I was not in leadership. I was not in a legitimate leadership position, but I had leadership responsibilities because I was leading without authority. Leaders emerge in various ways. All members initially have potential to be the leaders. Members who don't talk are immediately discounted. So you see that everybody has a potential to be the leader, but people who don't talk. Well, it's one thing I can tell you is this is why I tell people who are introverts and who are very timid or passive. If you're not talking and you're around strong personalities and really aggressive people, you're the first people they rule out for leading. Members who are bossy are the next group to get eliminated because they don't understand that there's something bigger than themselves, which is the goal and the team. And so a lot of times people who are bossy, I found a lot of them to be self-centered. Those who remain as potential leaders speak frequently, are well informed of the issues facing the group, and are open-minded, democratic, sensitive, and skilled in expressing ideas for the group. So when you see the ones that's remaining, you see they have a lot of things that they actually bring to the table. And as a result, this is why they can get things done, because if they all are like this, then it eliminates the opportunity for turmoil and competition and things like unhealthy competition and things like that. Some characteristics that are related to leadership are effective listening. So when you talk about effective listening, this means I listen to people and I'm actually hearing what they say. I'm not just watching their mouth move. Effective listening, because I'm listening for things, not only for what people say, but things in my surrounding and stuff that might be beneficial, can help me do my job better. Self-monitoring. These people can check themselves. One of the things that they don't need is other people to check them, because they check themselves. They know their strengths or weaknesses, and they know a lot of times how to push themselves when they're in an uncomfortable spot, how to rise above that. And not the fact that they do great in it, but they do better in it. Extroversion, sociable. Okay. When it comes to this, being an extrovert and being sociable, being able to mix and mingle with folks, be personable. This is a leadership asset, ability that they'll do. And it's like, you give you an example. You could take a good leader and put them in a room with a bunch of people they don't know, and before the night's over, they'll walk out of there with 10 or 12 friends. And I won't say friends, but 10 or 12 contacts and things like that. Intelligence. Know who you are, know what it is you're doing, be informed, and utilize data to help you make good decisions. Appropriate emotion. Use the appropriate emotion. And they always tell you, don't make emotional decisions, which that's true. But there are times when you can use the appropriate emotion. And I'll give you an example. If you're a leader and you suspect that your team is kind of a little down and they're a little struggling right now, morale's a little low, you might come in one day and you might give them a pep talk. And it might be really upbeat, just like this. Get them going, let them know, I believe in you. I know we can do this. And I know right now everybody's not feeling great about what's going on. But you know what? We've always won. We've always succeeded. We've always achieved results. And we're going to do that again. And we're going to get through this. That's emotion right there. But I'm using emotion in a positive way. Despite assumptions that males emerge as leaders more than women, biological sex now seems irrelevant, although physiological gender is not. So psychological gender is not. So sometimes just, you see people who might think that men all the time excel as leaders. No. But what you do have sometimes is people who have a psychological, what they believe about their gender as a result of just psychological conditioning. And we do have some myths about leadership. So let's take a look at myth 1. Leadership is a personality trait that individuals possess in varying degrees. No single set of traits will identify the best leader for any given situation. So you look at it, someone might be a good leader for certain things. They might be a bad one at other things. Myth 2, there is an ideal leadership style no matter what the situation. Truth, there are various leadership styles that may be appropriate in different situations. So it's not just one. There are multiple. And multiple leaders are versatile enough to have those. 3, leaders get other people to do the work for them. Truth, getting the necessary work accomplished often takes a dynamic interaction between a leader and a group of people. So leaders don't get people to do the work for them. Bottom line is leaders get them to do their work. And their job may be managing people. It's not doing tasks and duties. So styles of leadership. So autocratic, decisions made solely by the leader. So what you find is this. I'll give you an example. Vladimir Putin of Russia, picture perfect autocrat. He makes all the decisions. Democratic decisions made in consultation with group tasks, social dimensions. You look at the United States of America. This is a democratic society, and we have our democratic process where we elect the president. And the president is not a king or a dictator or autocrat. Laissez-faire, passive hands-off attitude. When I see the laissez-faire type of passive and hands-off, a lot of times it can be associated with a couple of things. One thing is someone's just a naturally timid and shy kind of person or introvert. Another thing is they don't really know their job. So therefore, they kind of leave it to others and hope that people don't get exposed. I call it like the imposter syndrome. Transactional, exchange of resources between the leader and the followers. So transactional, basically, I do something for y'all, y'all do something for me. And there are times when that's okay, but you can't make a living with that philosophy. You can't constantly give you an example. Every time I do something for the group or ask the group to do something, they expect something in exchange because you've been conditioned to think everything is transactional. Transformational. Leader inspires followers to act beyond self-interest. Transformational leadership is what people should endeavor for because now you get people to do things that sometimes they never thought they can do because you inspire and you motivate them and you lead them by example and you do what it takes to help people do their job. And I always tell people as a transformation leader, give your reports, direct reports, your employees what they need so they can give you what you want. Charismatic. Leader has perceived extraordinary qualities. These are the ones a lot of times when you see them, it's just like they can make you feel good just by listening to them. They can make you feel good by just being around them because they are charismatic. And it's amazing too because when I say this, charismatic is not always applicable to good leaders. It's actually sometimes applicable to bad people or criminals. And this is why some of them are actually, when you see someone who can actually rise to the front of a criminal organization or become a mob boss or things along those lines, it's because they're charismatic. three approaches to leadership that help understand leader efficacy. So functional concept. A central task and social actions or functions must be identified and carried out by leaders and group members in their pursuit of goals. So when you see that there's functional concept, the central tasks, and so you have social actions, but everything's identified and everybody knows what the leader's supposed to do and what the group member's supposed to do. Contingency concept. Appropriate leadership actions must match the situational characteristics of the group, including the type of task, member, the readiness, and the group's interpersonal climate. So when you have this, it's kind of like the leadership styles and the things must match the situational characteristics of the group. So when you look at that, those things change as members change, tasks change, and the climate changes. You have all these types of things. Culture changes, all these types of things come in on the contingency concept. Distributive concept. Leadership is a function of the group's efforts found in the inseparable relationship between the leaders and the followers. So this is where you have distributive leadership, where it's a functional relationship between the leaders and the followers. And I can tell you that can actually be altered if you change the leader or the leaders, or if you change the followers. It actually, where it's working as a distributive concept, it may not work because the players have been changed. So there's a couple of companies called Hershey and Blanchard, and people are familiar with Hershey's candy. So have provided a model to help match leadership style to the readiness level of followers. So look here, leaders should look at member maturity and readiness. So based on this, leaders will tell specific instructions with close supervision. So when you have this, a lot of times, particularly when you have folks who may be new or inexperienced, or you trying or have an experienced group that's trying to do something new, you're going to get specific instructions and close supervision, because right now they're doing some things they're not familiar with. Instructions with support. So when you give instructions with support, this is a lot of times is when you sell, it's because you have people that are experienced or something that they have a lot of familiarity with. So basically you give them instruction what you want to do and you support them. And basically when you say support them, you mean basically whatever they need, they ask for, you give. Participate, facilitation and coordination. So when you participate, facilitation, coordination, this is where you actually help train and prepare folks for duties and responsibilities, and then you coordinate to make sure that everything runs as good as it should. Delegate, give responsibility to the group. So anytime you see when someone delegates, that usually 99.9% of the time means there's somebody or somebody's who is, if you trust, the leader trusts with great deal of responsibility. And that's usually something, it's usually earned because somebody's very experienced or the group is very experienced. What good leaders do? Establish the group's goal. Establish the group's goal. What is it we're supposed to do? Let them know. What is it we're trying to obtain? Or what is it we're trying to go? Let them know. Mold the members into a team. This is something right here. When you're trying to mold the members of the team, this is a lot of moving parts. So there's some things you got to take a look at. You got to look at skill sets. What is it you're trying to do? The tasks and stuff you're trying to do. So you got to look at the different skill sets that people bring. Do you have the right skill sets? And you may need multiple types of skill sets because you may have multiple tasks in hand. Also, while you're molding that team, you may find that there's somebody who initially is part of that team that you determined was not going to be a good fit, and you have to remove them and bring somebody else in. Never lose sight of the group's task and its completion. Always keep focused with the task and its completion, meaning you can't chase shiny white objects every time they come around. So whatever it is you're supposed to do, you stick to it. And you may deviate some because you may need to, but you stay on task, you stay on track, and you make sure you take it to completion. Encourage members to assume leadership responsibilities. This is something a lot of times won't happen on its own. As the leader, you have to encourage that and try to get people to grow. One of the things you want to get them to do that, so you can get them to the point where it's like a manager once told me one time, if I do my job correctly, I should almost manage myself out of a job. What he meant was, I'm going to get these people so good at what they do and so proficient at what they do, they won't hardly need a manager. Do not take their leadership for granted. Okay, do not take their leadership for granted. Bottom line is this. It's something that's earned through skills and time and experience, and don't take it for granted. Because if you one or two people leave the group or the team or whatever else, you're going to find out just how much that was actually needed. So my thing is always acknowledge the leadership. Don't take it for granted. Acknowledge them, accept them, and give them praise whenever you can. 4 areas of leadership competence in the virtual groups. Now, this is really important. This is something now because we live in a global society. So this right here is very important. Leadership is key to virtual success. Virtual group leaders have to carefully manage meetings. Virtual group leaders do not lose sight of social dimension of their group. Virtual group leaders use multiple technologies in their group work. Virtual group leaders are managing folks and leading folks who are in different parts of the world geographically, different time zones. They really need to be on their P's and Q's to ensure that they can get all the things to be successful. And they do use a lot of different things at their disposal to do that, whether it be virtual calls, text, email, you name it, phone calls, all those things. And sometimes even periodic field visits where they travel to other countries to see them. Group members expect leaders to perform administrative duties, plan for meetings, follow up on meetings, manage written communication, agenda minutes, keeping notes, keeping minutes of each meeting, and keeping permanent files. What good leaders do? Group members expect them to do these types of things. Now, I will tell you this. When I see that usually says to me that you don't physically have a leader doing that he or she will probably have somebody doing that for them, but they're making it happen. So they're responsible for these types of things. Lead group discussions. So when you see the group discussions, the leaders are going to lead those discussions. Initiating discussions, start the meeting. One of the reasons you want to do that as a good leader is you want to set the tone. You want the subject matter that you won't discuss, and you want to set the tone for the rest of the day. I'm going to give you an example. What if it's a situation where you're starting a group meeting, and this is going to be where you have to kind of chastise some people for underperforming? Then you have to set the tone for that. What if it's a situation where you're going to actually praise people for overachieving? Then you're going to set the tone for that. That's why you start the discussions initially. Structuring discussions, keeping the discussion organized. So one of the things you do is you structure discussions and you keep discussions organized. Don't let group members stray or take the conversation and go somewhere else. Equalizing participation. Encourage all members to participate. One of the things you do is you try to find ways to pull people in, particularly for the folks who are extroverts or who are timid or passive. You got to try to bring them in because they have value too. And you got to get them to understand, but you have to bring them in. And I'm going to give you an example. One of the ways I used to do that is when I have several people who are not participating or whatever, or kind of not giving input, I might throw what we refer to as an overhead question. Here's an example of an overhead question. By show of hands, how many of you have ever experienced something like this? Okay, now when they throw their hand up, then go ahead and call on that person and pull them in. Stimulate creative and critical thinking. Stimulate creative and critical thinking. You do this by a lot of times asking questions. Asking deep, thought-provoking questions is one of the ways you can get people to think and try to be creative because they have to answer your question. Leading virtual group discussions. Know how to use computer tools like teleconferencing. Set the rules for the use of any specific technology and best model. If instant messaging is used, how will it be used during the meeting? If chats will occur, how will they be used? Keep track of who speaks. Notice if a member has dropped out of the conversation. So one of the ways that good leaders will do this is they will have what we call like a producer. So assistant, somebody to help them to keep track of this stuff. Give you an example. It's kind of, for me, for someone who's actually been in leadership and trained and done facilitation, sometimes it can be a little difficult when you're trying to run the meeting or run some training and also keep track of the technology as it goes, like flipping, let's say, a presentation or using whiteboards and things like that. So having a lot of times what you'll find out in today, you will find someone, a lot of times it's referred to as a producer, when it's facilitation, or assistant if you're just having a group discussion. Monitor your own behavior. Be careful not to jump in too quickly. Be patient listening to others. The lag time between messages can be delayed. Be prompt in checking for the meaning of message. So be careful not to jump in too quick. Don't be overzealous to jump in on something while a conversation is going on among people, or that be too eager to give some input. Monitor your behavior. Sometimes if you're over eager, if you're a very aggressive person, sometimes it pays to pull that back, do a self-check and pull it back, because you really want, when you have group discussions and things like that, you really want people involved. Well, if you're the one doing all the talking and making all the points, there's no need for anybody else to talk. Be patient, listen to others. The lag time between messages can be delayed. So listen to others, allow them to give but listen to what they say. Not just, I saw their lips moving. No, listen to what they say. One of the things by doing that, sometimes people tell you things when it ain't what they say, is how they say it. Listen for that. Lag time between messages can be delayed. So when you look at lag time between messages, sometimes I do that intentionally because I want people to think. I may ask a question or something, and I want people to think before we get an answer, because it's something that's pretty deep. Be prompt in checking for the meaning of messages. So one of the things you want to do, be prompt in checking for the meaning of messages. Don't let somebody put something out and you think you might know what they meant, and come to find out 2 days later that wasn't what they meant. They meant something else, but you didn't verify. I call it trust but verify. And this is one of the ways you can actually minimize miscommunications. So what good leaders do? Develop the group. Establish a climate of trust. Establish norms that build trust. Function as a coordinator rather than a dictator. Encourage members to get to know each other. So when you have functional groups, a lot of times what it looks like is, I had somebody tell me one time that group almost act like family. That was because they had a very good leader who had built a climate of trust, and these folks got along and they respected each other, and they got a chance to get to know each other. One of the things that they did is they got together periodically outside of work. Trust me, people will not do that if they don't like each other. Developing teamwork and promoting cooperation. Speak of us and we rather than I and you. That's one of the things that is very important, is understanding how you use your how you use verbally, how you describe things. I'll give you an example. If I was as a leader had got some accolades for an award or something, one of the things I would tell them, my team, look what we were able to do. Because of us working together and stuff, they're acknowledging me to give me this right here and stuff, but this is all possible because of you. And I will make sure I let them know that. You hear this a lot of times in sports when you hear something like a quarterback of a football team, when he talks about he threw 5 touchdowns. Well, the thing he'll come back and say is, I was able to throw 5 touchdowns because of those 5 guys up there in front blocking for me. Develop a name or another symbol of group identification. That's one of the things that you see this a lot. I know you used to do this a lot in the Army. You used to have things you refer to, even with base camps and in war zone stuff. You refer to them. I remember one that comes to mind right now was Base Camp Wolverine, after the Marvel character Wolverine. But it's something about those symbolism. It brings people closer together because now they all feel like they're part of something. Wolverine. Watch for evidence of hidden agenda items that conflict with the group's goals. Usually when you're looking for this type of stuff, it doesn't take very long to see it or hear it, because you can't hide that for so long. And anytime you detect that, my advice is try to nip it in the bud, but try to look for the source of where it's coming from. there's a high probability that somebody you probably want to get out of that group. Use appropriate conflict management approaches and procedures. Bottom line is this: nobody likes conflict, but what I can tell you is when it does appear, you have to meet it head on, and you have to address it quickly and figure out what it is you need to do. But in the process of doing that, what you don't do is actually come off too heavy-handed and start alienate and pissing people off. Have fun, share a laugh or a joke with the group. You know, it's one of the things I always tell my guys that, listen, we're gonna laugh with each other, but we ain't gonna laugh at each other. And we're gonna have some fun while we do our job, but we are gonna do our jobs. I tell my college students the same thing. We're gonna have some fun in here while we learn, but we're gonna learn as we know, laughing with each other, but not at each other. Distributive leadership is challenging and requires a level of maturity and self-confidence by everyone to encourage member leadership responsibility. So be perceptive. Know what's going on. Ignorance is not bliss. When you're a leader and you're in charge, you need to be perceptive about what you know. Believe what you see, believe what you hear. Trust your gut, but most importantly, rely on your experience and your knowledge more so than your gut. Adapt your behavior to the group's needs. Hey, if you have a group that is fairly new or young or inexperienced, then adapt to that. Manage them. You can't lead them because they don't know exactly what they're doing just yet. So they're really young and inexperienced, so you'll be doing more management. Focus on task needs rather than social relationships. So what is task needs and stuff? One of the problems if you focus on social relationships rather than the needs, what you can do is develop cliques in a group. Meaning you got 15 people. These 3 over here are close. Those 4 over there are close. And then those 6 over there are close. So you have to concentrate on the task needs, and this is what brings them together. The social relationships is something that can actually be divisive if that's where your focus is. Balance participating with listening. So I participated. Good leaders will participate as needed, but they're mostly listening to see what's going on. Express ideas clearly, meaning everybody understands exactly what it is you're talking about. It must be clearly understood. It can't, if you got 15 people, 10 of them get it and 5 of them don't. Can't have that. It's got to be something that's very clear. Be knowledgeable about the group's processes. This is one of the things that some people get mixed up on, and they think, well, I need to know how to do everything that they do. Well, that's almost impossible, because if you're a leader and you're high enough, you got people working for you in career fields and jobs you never worked in. So you're never going to know it to that level. But you do need to be knowledgeable about the processes that they go through. That's one of the things sometimes people complain about when they are subject matter experts talking to some leaders who don't have their background. They're not knowledgeable enough to understand what they're telling them. Be willing to plan, improvise, and adapt. One of the things we used to say in the military, in various branches of the military, adapt and overcome. Bottom line is no plan is written in stone. Be willing to change and improvise and adapt as you go. As situations change, can you be flexible? Ethical guidelines for group leaders. Do not lie or intentionally send deceptive or harmful messages. Bottom line is, once you do that, your credibility shot. There's no trust after that. If you've got people working for you as a leader and they don't trust you, I can show you a ship that's going to sink eventually. Place concern for the group and others ahead of one's personal gain. That was easy to find out over a period of time, because people who are narcissistic and self-centered, they can't hide it so much. And you can tell that they're really about self-promotion more so than actually just promoting their group and getting good work. Be respectful and sensitive. A lot of times some people view this as weakness, and I do understand where it comes from. I do, particularly for men. But you know what? At the end of the day, it's being human. Men and women alike are human. Regardless of the race, ethnicity, culture, sexual gender, and all this, they are human. And there are times when it pays to be respectful and sensitive. Stand behind other members as they carry out decisions. one of the things you do is, as a good leader, you want to develop other leaders. In order to do that, you got to stand behind them, help them make good decisions, and help them understand, and support them when they do it. And also, too, when they do it, sometimes they'll get things wrong. Now, whether you choose to be a disciplinarian or an educator is going to determine how well that's going to go over. So some people view an opportunity when somebody mess up, an opportunity for me to discipline them folks. So, and then other folks will look at it and say, this is an opportunity for me to educate him and help him to understand where he went wrong so he won't do it again. Treat members with equal respect, sex, ethnicity, social background. This is the thing right here where some people have biases. And sometimes what I'm seeing is stuff, and I'm not going to talk about anything like blatant racism or sexism or anything like that. I'm going to talk about just basic biases that they have ingrained in it because probably comes from their culture or how they were raised or their family or the community. And so I give you an example. You may have somebody that was raised and came up in the area and had beliefs and stuff that, that females can't do certain jobs. And barring, now there's some jobs they can't do because it may require you to be able to lift things. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about brain power, not brawn power. Or certain ethnic groups may not be able to do stuff. And realistically, listen to what I'm saying. I'm not talking about, and they're not coming from a racist perspective. What they are coming from is their upbringing, which you could say was actually racist, but this is what they believe and stuff until they actually get changed to find out or get educated. Establish clear policies. Make sure that they're not ambiguous policies. People know what right is and what wrong is, and know how to operate. Follow the group rules. Here's a killer. If you're a leader and you tell everybody else to follow the rules and you don't, I can show you right there, credibility is shot at that point, and also trust again. That concludes this chapter.